After we finished our PackVis, let's now try to create the same visualization with a tree. So let's take a look back into the documentation of the tree hierarchy. And besides the pack, there's also a reference about the tree. And the tree is also expecting a root hierarchy. And you can also define the size of the tree. So the whole API is pretty similar to the API of the pack. So let's just try to create a new function which is called createTree, which we'll call the tree function with our size of 500, 500. We need to import the tree function from the free hierarchy as well. And now we can create our animals tree with createTree and the hierarchy object. Now if we render the descendants of our tree instead of our pack, we should see that so the first thing we see is that something really strange happened to our pack visualization. It changed how it's how it looks. And if we check into our node, we can see that we have some new values for X and Y, and there's also a value for R. And this is pretty strange, because if you look at the documentation of the tree is only adding the X and the Y values to each node, but it's actually not adding the R value. But the pack was adding the R attribute to our nodes. And every time something that strange happens, the reason is probably an accidental mutation. So we reused our animals hierarchy in order to create the pack and in order to create the tree. And the pack changed something about the animals hierarchy and also the tree. And the combination of those two looks like tree, like the tree shape, but it's using the radiuses from our create pack. And in order to avoid this accidental mutation, let's just rewrite the animals hierarchy to be a function so that we can create a new hierarchy for our pack and a new hierarchy for our tree. And if we do so, our tree, our PackVis does now look the same as before. And if we take a look at the list which we print out from the trees, we can see that each node has an X and a Y attribute, which is what we expected when we looked at the docs. So let's comment out the PackVis for now, and let's try to render our animals tree. So just as with the PackVis, we will map over our nodes, and we will receive an X and a Y attribute, and for each of them we're going to render a circle with CX at X and CY at Y. And for the radius we just use a constant value of 10. And if we do so, we can see that we have now a hierarchy. So this one is probably the mammals with dog, cat, mouse, and this one are our fish. And we can also see that the circle on top here is half cut. The reason for that is that the circle is always rendered in the center, and then it has some radius, so the upper part of our radius is just not displayed. And we can change that by decreasing the height of our tree by the radius we want to render. And after we did so, we can just add an additional G element around our circle, and this one will receive a transform property, and we will just move the complete visualization down by 10. so that we move it down by the radius. And if we do so correctly, maybe I need some pixels here. No. Translate. An S is missing. And then we should also be able to use just 10. We can see our full tree rendered here. As you may have noticed, there are also some warnings from React about our use of multiple items without a key attribute. So React is expecting to be able to identify every element if you render multiple elements. And in order to do so, we can just use the name of our data because we know that the name is definitely unique. And if you take a look at our nodes, we can see that within each node there's a field data, and this field contains the actual name of the of our node. So let's use data, and let's get the name out of data, and we can use this data, this name, as the key for our circle. And now our warning disappears, and we are able to render our tree. Now, our tree usually does not only consist of nodes, but also of links between those nodes. And you might have spotted when we took a deeper look on the hierarchy API that the nodes API, besides dependence, contains a function which is called links. And if we render those links, we can see that we get a list of 9 links with source and target, and each of them contains a node, and those nodes are the 2 nodes which are connected. So we can use those links in order to render the links between our nodes. So let's map over our links, and this time we get a source and a target object, and both are nodes, so both should contain an X and a Y property. So let's access them by using X1 as X and Y1 as Y. So I'm renaming X and Y in order to be able to use to destructure it for both cases, for the target and for the source, I S Y. And now we can use an SVG line, which is expecting the X, Y, and X1 and Y1 parameter in order to specify the point where the line will start, and the X2 and Y2 parameter in order to specify where the line will end. We got one mistake. X target argument name clash. Oh, I think it's probably the other way around. Yeah. So it's we need to write the accessor up front and then our new name behind it. So let's just swap everything. And now we're able to render the lines. So we are not able to see the lines yet because they have no stroke. But if we add a black stroke, then we should see lines between all of our nodes. And we're also seeing that we're slightly cutting out our lower circles. So let's maybe just decrease the size of our tree to 480. So we need to subtract 20 because we need to include this half radius, or this radius, this half circle, and this radius. We have this warning once more about the key property missing, and maybe this time we can just use the index, which is provided if you iterate over an element with map. So let's just name it to I, and then we can just provide an I as the index of our line, and our warning disappears. This way we have now successfully created our tree. Let's maybe render in our PagVis as well, so that we have both visualizations at once. the warning message for the pack with about the missing key attribute is here as well. So let's quickly add the name here as well from our data attribute. And now, without any warnings, we're able to render our tree and our pack visualization at the same time.